tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Duly diligent about everybody's personal situation about the heat.
Soaring temperatures and staying safe, the heat wave across the province and the warnings that come with it. Also, a not guilty verdict in the sex assault case of former Canuck Jake Virtanen.
Nobody wants to leave.
And forced to move. People living in tents on the downtown east side are raising concerns about an order to evict.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. More fear in Langley tonight as police confirm most of the victims in yesterday's shooting lived on the street. They're now asking for help from the public to figure out why the transient population may have been targeted.
Grief counselors are set up here in the gym of this Langley school, but it's hot and it's quiet and few people are showing up. A sign of how difficult it can be to reach a vulnerable population that's feeling more vulnerable today. These men came here because they're scared.
I was in Tim Center and in the library. It was really quiet too, not many people around. And I could see the odd few homeless people. And I could see on their faces that they were traumatized.
You know, these people, they're human beings. They deserve better treatment. And their dignity is taken away when they don't have a place to live or call their own.
Police say if anyone saw this man on Monday night, call them. They say 28-year-old Jordan Goggin changed clothes midway through a shooting spree that left 2 men dead and injured 2 other people. Police also released photos of a car they say Goggin was driving. Note the covered-up plates.
We're trying to build a timeline of his movements and the people he spoke with or connected with that evening around the shooting. This will assist us with the victimology, which will help us determine the motive.
Those who work with vulnerable people say the city needs to do more to help people without homes.
I mean, there's so many layers behind this. It really just goes to show that there's not enough services to support people. Until that changes, the sad thing is that this could happen again.
2 victims survived the shooting. A man who was shot in the leg is expected to be okay. A woman remains in hospital in serious condition. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Langley.
Dozens of residents of an encampment along East Hastings in Vancouver have been told to tear down their tents. The fire department has issued the order citing safety concerns, but as John Hernandez reports, campers say there's nowhere else for them to go.
Everybody's trying to survive down here, and they're doing what they can, the best they can.
Anxieties linger through the long rows of tents on East Hastings Street. Fears that a mass eviction is coming.
It's like reading you the riot act, right? It's like, you gotta go? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's no discussion.
The encampment has grown steadily over the past month, but on Monday, Vancouver Fire ordered that these tents have to come down, citing growing safety concerns, including a steady increase of fires in the area. Earlier this month, a nearby church on East Hastings burned down.
Why we're so concerned with those areas is the obstruction of exits and entrances into buildings. We've seen structures that are blocking our paths to get there. We've also seen quite a number of propane tanks.
Sidewalks and building entryways in the area are noticeably clogged. Residents here admit the situation isn't perfect, but many aren't prepared to leave, having been forced out of previous encampments with nowhere to go.
Where are we supposed to go? You know, we're going to go somewhere else and they're going to do the same thing over there. And somewhere else, they're going to do the same thing over there. So I'm just going to stay here and I'm going to try and fight it.
They would have spent, like I said, half as much time getting these people housing and money than they have trying to get rid of them. We all would have been housed and taken care of months ago.
The city says it will help expedite removal and offer supports like storage for belongings. Housing advocates say what's missing is a relocation plan.
It seems like all these efforts so often are just about rendering people invisible and pushing people out and scattering them, which is going to make people less safe. So there's an opioid crisis, there's an extreme heat wave. Both of those are deadly situations.
In a statement, BC Housing admitted accommodations are tight, but it's working to find what it can for those displaced. Tents are ordered to come down by Thursday. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A jury has found former Vancouver Canucks forward Jake Virtanen not guilty of sexual assault. Virtanen was charged with 1 count in January after an investigation by Vancouver police. Eva Ugwensenge has more on the decision and the reaction.
12-person jury took less than a day to deliberate and deliver their not guilty verdict. Lawyers for the prosecution and defense finished closing arguments on Monday, each focusing on the reliability of the trial's 2 witnesses and their conflicting testimony. 25-year-old Virtanen and the complainant were the only 2 witnesses called to testify about an incident in a Vancouver hotel room in 2017. The complainant was 18 at the time. She testified she fended off Virtanen's physical advances and told him multiple times she didn't want to have sex. Virtanen's defense lawyer called her credibility into question. Virtanen maintained his innocence throughout the trial. He said she never said no or pushed him away and was a willing participant.
This crime in our community, there are only ever 2 witnesses usually to it. And so that becomes the challenge, is it's a credibility contest. And unfortunately, the Crown carries the burden of proof in proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused committed sexual assault, that there was no consent. And that becomes challenging because there are only 2 people that remember what happened, and obviously they were at polar opposites in their recollection as to what happened.
The judge in the trial gave the jury clear instructions before they began their deliberations. They were told they could only find Virtanen guilty if the Crown had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt and must otherwise acquit Virtanen. Eva Ugwensenge, CBC News, Vancouver.
And another BC trial is coming to an end as well. Crown prosecutors have started closing arguments in the trial of the man accused of harassing and extorting BC teen Amanda Todd before her death. Aidan Coban has pleaded not guilty to 5 charges, including criminal harassment, possession of child pornography, and communication with a young person. He is not charged with Todd's death. The trial is now in its 7th week, and in the coming days, the Crown will aim to prove that Coban was the person behind the online accounts communicating with Todd. Now to several updates in the double homicide earlier this week in Chilliwack. The suspect, Eric John Shestalo, has been found dead near Bridal Falls, and police have identified the 2 women who were killed. They are 43-year-old Amber Cully, pictured here, and 49-year-old Mimi Cates. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says Shestalo knew the victims, but are not specifying the nature of that connection. Cully's family released a statement through iHit saying she leaves behind children. They say they will, quote, never let a murderer put out her bright light. The suspect is believed to have died by suicide through an autopsy. That is pending. Anyone with information is asked to call iHit. A long-awaited sexual assault trial of prominent Indigenous leader and former BC Cabinet Minister Ed John came to an abrupt end today in Prince George Court. It lasted 1 day before a Crown prosecutor stayed all charges against John because the criteria to pursue those charges was no longer met and a conviction was not likely. John was on trial for sexual assault allegations dating back to the 1970s. Yesterday, the alleged victim testified for hours, often through tears, about assaults she says started when he was 13. Heat warnings are in place for much of the province tonight. And while you're being urged to take precautions to stay safe, Steve Jung is speaking with first responders who are just hoping for the best, with temperatures expected to top 40 degrees in some parts.
There are warnings everywhere, but experts say what we're experiencing won't be as bad as last year, with temperatures about 5 to 10 degrees cooler.
98% of the people who died in last year's heat dome were because they were spending that time indoors in dangerously hot conditions. When you get to 31 degrees overnight in your building, those are really dangerous conditions that cause this extremely high uptick in mortality as we saw last year.
Though it won't be as hot, first responders are ready just in case.
I will give them credit. They've already activated their emergency command center. They're really getting ahead of it this time for sure. If the unexpected volume comes in, no matter how prepared they are, at the end of the day, we are still suffering from significant staffing shortages. So if the volume spikes through the roof like it did last time, it's entirely possible that we will have the same result as last time.
In many cities around BC, cooling centers and misting stations are open. Water parks are running, and people are being encouraged to cool off when they have the chance. Richmond Fire Rescue Chief Jim Wishlove says his department has been in a heat response plan since yesterday.
We have our full staff day and night in the city ready to respond to those emergencies, so I'm very confident that we'll be able to respond and help anybody in need. The summer weather and the heat is a blessing. It does present some issues that don't happen during the rest of the year, and so I can't stress enough the preparedness piece to stock up on water, hydrate, look after yourselves, use sunscreen, stay out of the heat.
And as we work to stay safe this time around, experts warn climate change means heat events are here to stay. Steve Jong, CBC News, Vancouver.
The number of new wildfires in the province has jumped significantly this past week with 68 new blazes. You are looking at aerial footage of the Nahanee Creek wildfire near Lytton yesterday. The BC Wildfire Service says the area north of the Stein River continues to be the most active. The Nahanee Creek fire remains the lone wildfire of note in this province. It is expected to grow in the coming days with hot weather and wind gusts. Let's head over now to meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. And Joe, obviously, when it is super hot out, naturally in BC, we do think about fires. I'm sure you're watching that fire danger rating. So how are things looking?
Yeah, you're right, Anita. It is steadily climbing. The fuels are drying out rapidly. Take a look at the fire danger rating across the province today, and you can see huge swaths of orange now across parts of the province with pockets of extreme. And the higher up we go in the risk category, that means that new fire starts may spread rapidly and become out of control easily. So we're just really worried about a trigger right now. The stage is set. That trigger can be human or lightning caused. And I am not seeing a lot of lightning risk in the forecast. That's the good news for the next couple of days. But look at these temperatures. The temperatures we're feeling today and the humidity that we're feeling today will be the story again for the next couple of days. In fact, we may be a degree or so warmer Wednesday and Thursday, maybe coming down just a degree for Friday and Saturday. It's really not until Sunday that we start to see temperatures come down to a reasonable range. This is the current humidex right now. And we heard earlier that, yes, this is about 10 degrees cooler than where we were last year. We're talking about humidex values, 41 out towards Fraser Valley rather than the 51 of last year. But it's still dangerous. Right now, it feels like 37 in through West Van. And the higher the humidity, the harder it is for our body to cool down. So we still have these widespread heat warnings. And it really isn't just the afternoon high temperatures we watch for. It's that humidity, it's the overnight lows, and it's the longevity of the event. And we're really just getting started. This is a heat dome setup. I know that that's such a buzzword connected to 2021, but anytime we see a blocked high pressure ridge park itself over BC or over anywhere for that matter and act like a lid for the heat down below, that's a pressure, that's a heat dome. And we are getting a bit of that pressure cooker setup, just nowhere near what we saw last year. So Anita, still dangerous, but not quite warranting that government issued extreme heat alert. But heat warnings are going to be in place for the long haul.
That is good news for sure, though, Joe, that it's not as bad as last year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Indigenous families are being offered access to new mental health programming to help young kids cope with their worries and anxiety. The Canadian Mental Health Association released this promotion for the Big Worries program, a free guidance service for caregivers and parents of kids aged 3 to 12. Coaching sessions are done over the phone to bolster online tutorials. An Indigenous advisory group worked to ground the program in appropriate cultural practices. Their goal was to help families recognize the root causes of parenting challenges and also empower them with new skills and tools.
Working with the caregivers, the parents, and the child on really important issues, on how to handle stress, how to handle anxiety, how to handle depression, how to ask for help, how to communicate. Those things are all in this program, which is really important to teach children at the youngest age possible.
She adds that some Indigenous parents were stripped of the opportunity to raise their own children because the government interference through the decades, like residential schooling and the 60s scoop. Well, a grassroots organization is partnering with Fraser Health to offer basic care and dignity to Surrey's vulnerable populations in the form of a mobile health clinic. It holds showers and doubles as a site for counseling and harm reduction services. This week, it's also providing relief from scorching temperatures. Designed to move, it can be quickly set up and placed in neighborhoods where it's needed. Our Gianpaolo Mendoza went along to find out how it works.
So a mobile health unit essentially is a jerry-rigged van that we've got, and in the back we've set it up so that we have all the harm reduction supplies laid out, all of our tent equipment, our private shower shelter that we have as well, all the tables, everything else we need for to run the site when we do arrive on scene. So we're able to just kind of open up, set up the whole unit, and then if a need arises elsewhere, we're quickly able to pack it up and go and set up elsewhere as well. With the heat, it just compounds everything else. People of privilege, including myself, you have the ability to hop into your vehicle, you can turn on the air conditioning, you go home, it's relatively cool. People who are street entrenched, who are underhoused, they don't have that option. So right now we're in Newton. It is an area that is seeing a lot of challenges associated with people being underhoused, and particularly for racialized communities. Many racialized community members, they don't have these services at all, and they've never seen them.
I've been using this service almost a couple months right now.
We were able to intervene at a very important stage, provide him with resources, address his medical and mental health challenges, and so now he's been able to take some positive steps in life.
Very hot day. We just came out. They gave us a phone today. We can use it for help, and we can use it for call the services.
It's something that we have to all, as British Columbians, make sure that we're keeping an eye on each other. Check on your friends and neighbors and make sure everyone's doing okay. And that's oftentimes the best solution for getting through climate emergencies at this point.
Well, that large barge beached on the bank of English Bay is finally getting cut down to size. Work is happening to dismantle and remove what has become one of the most prominent, though unintended, features of the West End. Crews are taking apart the vessel to move it piece by piece. The wayward barge has been a fixture on the shoreline for the last 8 months and reached its unusual perch after breaking loose from its moorings during November's extreme weather event. According to the city, the barge removal could take up to 4 months. And it's been a week since David Eby announced he was running for the leadership of the BC NDP, and so far no one has stepped forward to challenge him. So what issues would the presumed next premier focus on? What are his plans to tackle housing and crime? And how would his priorities differ from John Horgan? Our Justin McElroy sat down with Eby to ask him these and other questions.
David Eby is making pains to say the new boss would look a lot like the old boss.
John stepped down because he was concerned about his family and his health, and that's important. Not because he was unpopular, people didn't like the direction we were going.
In a campaign that may become a coronation, Eby has made clear he doesn't want to rock the boat too much, but he's still a different person than Horgan.
Premier Horgan, there was a huge focus on in particular Indigenous reconciliation, on diversity within the public sector, and ensuring that the government reflects British Columbians, on prioritizing ensuring that voices are heard in the legislature that hadn't been heard before. And for me, if I'm successful, all of those remain really important issues, and people will see a real focus on the issue of middle-class housing.
Eby had been minister responsible for housing and promised legislation to force municipalities to approve more homes to meet housing targets.
If I'm successful, it'll be a clear message to cities. Those cities that are helping deliver the housing, and government is going to be there to deliver that middle-class housing, then we're going to support them with the infrastructure that they need to make their communities livable, the community centers, the pools, the trails, that kind of stuff. And for those that don't, we're going to set minimum standards.
But under Eby's tenure, the price of housing has risen in British Columbia. And in many big cities, talk lately has been dominated by another issue that he oversaw as Attorney General.
What people are concerned about is seeing people who are struggling with mental health and addiction issues in their downtown cores. And they look at Hastings Street, and they're in Trail, or they're in Terrace, or they're in Kamloops, and they see these things.
Eby believes as the justice system works through the pandemic backlog, more people will be in jail, and claims more residential mental health beds will make a huge difference. but he says it's just another symptom of a runaway housing market.
I can't emphasize enough how much I believe that this issue of a shortage of middle-class housing is connected to so many problems we face, whether it's businesses being able to hire, whether it's public sector like healthcare being able to hire, family doctors in rural communities, nurses around rural hospitals, first responder response times, because and also the homelessness in our streets.
Of course, Eby has been part of this government for the last 5 years, which means if he becomes premier, his honeymoon time to make more progress on these issues could be shorter than the person he's replacing. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, I couldn't believe that I was so close to the Holy Father, for one thing.
Coming up, we hear from a Catholic deacon from the Squamish First Nation with a rare perspective on the Pope's visit to Canada and the apology he issued yesterday to Indigenous people. We speak to Rennie Nahanee next. Thanks so much for sticking with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, Little Jamaica in Toronto welcomed thousands this past weekend for a taste of the Caribbean. For many, it was a chance to showcase favorite dishes from the islands and bring together a neighborhood hit hard by the pandemic.
First time we're hosting Taste the Caribbean Food Festival on Eglinton Avenue West, and it features 28 different food vendors from the Caribbean. Our main goal is that people understand that there are many different Caribbean countries. The food is awesome from all of them. Everybody has something different to offer. So it's very important for us to explore, to try different ones. We know our staples, we know our jerk chicken, we know our roti, but there's so many other options. People love Caribbean food because of the flavors, the spices that are used. Some of our chefs talk about the marinating of the food. So, marinating your meats for 4 or 5 days really makes the seasoning soak in. Just using the different flavors throughout the different cultural backgrounds. So our flavors are a mix of a multitude of cultures that we represent as well.
I usually like to blend infuse foods. I'm an actual chef. I've cooked in and around Canada and the US the last 15 years. So with that, I bring my experience in the kitchen and my experience with cultures, and I kind of tell a story and kind of bring cultures together through food.
It's been a great day. We started off with the mayor coming here. She was excited seeing our popcorn, and from there it's just been taking off.
So today we have gourmet popcorn. All our popcorn is covered with chocolate. Our newest addition that we have, which we brought today, is pineapple coconut, raspberry s'mores, Crown Royale peach.
This is a community that's been suffering for ages. Gentrification, it looks like, construction out the wazoo, obscuring businesses so they're not getting any business coming in. And I feel like events like this on a consistent basis pulls people not only from around the community, but throughout the GTA and sometimes even in the US. So I think for me to be a part of that and try to help bring that business, more community, and everybody else in and around is something I'm doing to help this community stay intact and grow in the long run.
The Pope is wrapping up his visit to Alberta tonight before moving on to Quebec. Earlier today, he held Mass at a football stadium in Edmonton. It was a traditional service, and as Olivia Stefanovich reports, much like his apology yesterday, some Indigenous people were hoping for more.
A meeting with the faithful. A chance to speak to Catholics directly about the kind of society they want to build.
A future in which the history of violence and marginalization suffered by our Indigenous brothers and sisters is never repeated.
During his homily, Pope Francis didn't reiterate his residential school apology, something commentators were critical of.
This Mass was a missed opportunity of the celebration of Indigenous spiritual ways.
The Pope's words did resonate with this residential school survivor.
He's trying to direct us, I believe, the path forward.
But he and many others want the church to go further.
They need to do is to rescind the doctrine of the discovery that really imposed a law on our First Nations people.
I understand that there is a Vatican document that will be coming out that will address that.
This Canadian Archbishop anticipates more from the church to address the papal decrees that justify the seizure of Indigenous land by colonial powers.
It would be very good if the Pope could make that even clearer.
The atmosphere at the Pope's open-air Mass much different from his visit to Masquachese, where he officially apologized for residential schools, something many survivors hope he builds on as he continues his tour of Canada. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Edmonton.
Among those at the papal Mass, Deacon Rennie Nahanee of St. Paul's Parish in North Vancouver. Nahanee is not only a deacon, he's also an elder of the Squamish First Nation, a Catholic leader who integrates the symbols and wisdom of both Catholic and Indigenous traditions together. He was steps from the Pope at Mass today, a rare vantage point, and the National's Adrian Arsenault spoke with Nahanee about the historic event.
Deacon Rennie, I know it was not the plan for you to be sitting right beside the Pope, even as of that long ago, but you got a last-minute call.
Yes.
What was that like?
Pretty exciting. And I think I had a dream that something good would happen. And yesterday I actually found out that we're going to be decorations beside the Pope. You know what I mean by that?
I do.
Yes, okay. I got lots of bragging rights now. But for me, I watched the apology at Massachusetts. My eyes started watering, not because it was sad, but because I was joyful. I was thinking of my parents and my two sisters that passed away. I never got to hear this. And those are called like tears of forgiveness, which means that you feel better and your relationship's better with whoever you're having struggles with.
So as you're sitting there today and you're looking out at the crowd and you're looking at the Pope, what struck you about what you saw or felt or heard?
I think I felt some reconciliation there, judging by the cheering and clapping and things like that.
Why that think? Like, why that slight hesitation in your voice?
Well, there's always some people that may not reach that stage because reconciliation is it's an individual thing. I reconciled myself a long time ago, and I wish that other people would do the same.
Deacon Rennie, we spoke with Father Darrell Winkler, who is Indigenous. He's a Catholic priest. He was watching the ceremony today, and at the end he said, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but effectively it was a missed opportunity, that he expected more demonstrations of respect and solidarity with Indigenous cultures and more words of apology. Do you see where he's coming from there?
Well, sort of, but you know, this is not going to come from the Pope. The work has to come from the bishops of Canada, and below them, the priests. What I expected and what I feel is that the Pope would speak his apology and then invite all Canadians, I believe you mentioned that, to help with reconciliation. It's not just a Native thing. It's all of Canada.
You know, you and I did some work in March before the delegations went to Rome, and what you said at the time to us was that culture and language, it was taken from us. We need a demonstration that it's coming back.
Yes.
Are you getting that? Do you
Yes.
feel like you're getting that?
Oh, yes. I believe that's coming together. I think language is the big thing. I mean, there's other hurts and struggles, but you have to have language to make that a part of your life, you know. And our church was not necessarily doing that part before in our community, and so I started that because I look at all the places around the world, Chinese, Filipinos, Spanish, they all celebrate the Mass in their own culture, and I think, why not us?
It's a good spot to end. Deacon Rennie, always
Okay.
great to talk to you. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
A Catholic archdiocese in Ontario has denied a request from parishioners to contribute proceeds of the sale of a church to residential school survivors. St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church in central Ottawa is on the market, and the archdiocese says it has other plans in terms of contributing to Indigenous communities. The CBC's Julie Ireton has the story.
I was married in the church.
Missy Fraser attended St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church in Ottawa for decades. The century-old building has sat empty for the past few years. Now it's for sale, and it's prime real estate. After the discovery of unmarked graves at Catholic-run residential schools, Fraser and other former parishioners approached the local archdiocese.
There was a movement together for people to approach the archdiocese through a letter asking that the proceeds of the sale of the church be directed towards reconciliation and residential school survivors.
About 70 former parishioners asked for a significant portion of the proceeds, up to $3 million, be donated.
Local families built this church out of their pockets, going door to door, putting $5, $10 in a bucket, enough to buy a church, enough to buy a school. And that church was transferred to the archdiocese in trust. So again, you could say that the archdiocese perhaps doesn't belong to them.
The Archdiocese of Ottawa-Cornwall has different plans.
Our real estate is separate from the Indigenous funds, so we are contributing to Indigenous projects and funds, but these two things are two separate.
It's been a difficult time to be a Catholic.
Erin Kinsella is part of a grassroots group called Catholics for Truth and Reconciliation. It's encouraging the institution and its followers to contribute money and make change.
Because it was institutional decisions in a large sense that were responsible for religious orders being present in schools and even with decisions since that time in terms of reconciliation and healing. So there is absolutely a responsibility.
The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops says it will put $30 million into initiatives for residential school survivors. The Archdiocese of Ottawa-Cornwall plans to contribute $1.2 million to the Bishop's Fund, but that money won't come from real estate sales. It will be raised by going back to the community for donations. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you or someone you care about is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours and is available for survivors, intergenerational survivors, and their loved ones. Facing off, how Hockey Canada is pledging to do better next.
Howard Hughes' idea of a big time in Vancouver apparently is to stay holed up in that 20th floor hotel suite of his back there in the Bayshore. And the idea of every news agency in the world is to keep guys like me hanging around outside watching that particular non-event. Well, I'm prepared to go along with that for, let's say, the next 24 hours, and we'll see if we can find the elusive Mr. Hughes. Hughes did land at the Vancouver airport, and a man identified as Hughes did pass through customs and immigration. That much is known. A Hughes plane landed at a remote part of the airport, and in fact, aviation may be one reason for the visit. Dominion Aircraft of Vancouver has designed a short-field machine for which they cannot get federal financial backing, and there are rumors that Howard Hughes may be willing to pay the $3.5 million tag. Be that as it may, Howard Hughes is not talking as if anyone ever expected he would. The mysterious billionaire is taking his ease on the top floor of the Bayshore, watching movies, we're told, and presumably doing whatever else a whole lot of money can buy. Like the old song says, nice work if you can get it. Mr. Hughes has a nice view if he ever bothers to take it in. The curtains atop the Bayshore remain shut with the odd exception, and reporters are seizing on anything that comes along. Last night, for example, a man thought to be Hughes left the hotel. His office says that wasn't so. And so we're reduced to nattering helplessly, for example, about what a billionaire recluse likes to eat.
Guidelines have loosely been laid out that the items will probably be quite plain, but they want them well prepared and of the first quality. Yesterday I had some boneless chicken breast, boneless and skinless, and they were to be prepared in a poêle fashion, which is sort of like a poaching but not covered with liquid.
Security measures at the hotel have been beefed up somewhat to the discomfort of some regular guests, but Mission Impossible lives on with hourly changes in cast.
Hi, we're not allowed off, right?
Well, that seems to me to be the proper attitude to take toward this whole caper. If I were to be serious about it, I think I might very well wind up in a home. I have not seen Howard Hughes in the past 24 hours, and as a matter of fact, I haven't seen anybody else who's seen him either. So I'm forced into a sort of direct appeal, if you like. Mr. Hughes, if you're in there, and if you're watching television and you'd like to be interviewed, come on out, and we'll accommodate you. I think maybe we're going to be here for quite a while. Mike McCourt, CBC News, Vancouver.
More questions are being asked about what steps Hockey Canada took to investigate allegations of sexual assault and what the federal government that rolled out millions in funding knew about what happened. Maria Van Stackelberg reports.
How can you call your investigation independent when Hockey Canada is paying the bills on it?
This lawyer hired by Hockey Canada 4 years ago to look into serious allegations of sexual assault, hauled before a House of Commons Emergency Committee meeting. Danielle Robitaille says her investigation is reopened. Unlike last time, the hockey players in question must participate, or their names will be made public, and
they will receive a lifetime ban in participating in Hockey Canada.
This spring, Hockey Canada settled a $3.5 million lawsuit. A woman alleges she was sexually assaulted in 2018 by 8 former CHL players following an event in London, Ontario. Robitaille says she spent 18 months investigating, but stopped when the alleged victim wouldn't give a statement.
Is it acceptable that we drop any further investigation because there's no official complaint?
I appreciate that it's very frustrating to Canadians that we don't have an outcome yet. This is something that we have seen in the area of sexual violence in the justice sector as well. And what I can say is justice takes time.
Sport Canada, the government body that provides funding to Hockey Canada, was also questioned. Officials told the committee they've known about the allegations since 2018, but they never followed up with Hockey Canada and never told the Minister of Sport.
They could have stopped this. Sport Canada needs to own this as much as Hockey Canada.
Sport Canada officials were also asked why they waited to pull funding this spring when they knew about the allegations 4 years ago.
You want these organizations to reveal these cases. You want those organizations to actually take action on that. You don't want them to try to hide it.
I think it's fair to say Canadians have lost confidence. They've lost confidence in Hockey Canada.
They're losing confidence in Sports Canada.
Next, the committee will once again hear from Hockey Canada's top brass, as well as leaders of major junior hockey leagues across the country. They'll be questioned about what they did or didn't do about the allegations. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper has weighed in on the Conservative Party leadership race. Tom Perry looks at what brought Harper to give his first endorsement since leaving office.
Friends, fellow Conservatives, greetings. I haven't talked to you like this in a while, and much has transpired.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper weighing in as his party chooses a new leader.
Pierre Poilievre was a strong minister in my government. In the past several years, he's been our party's most vocal and effective critic of the Trudeau Liberals.
Backing Pierre Poilievre, who on Twitter called the endorsement a big honor. His main rival, Jean Charest, says Harper made a personal choice, one that other contenders today brushed off.
I think the vast majority of Canadians and Conservatives make their own decisions and maybe are intrigued by endorsements, but I think Canadians will make their own mind up.
But Harper's word carries weight. He helped forge the modern Conservative Party, led it to victory in 2006, and remains a powerful figure.
And I think that is something that Mr. Poilievre is very grateful for, because Mr. Harper gives him some credibility in places he hadn't had it, from his cuddling of convoyers to his preaching about cryptocurrency. So Stephen Harper's laid the hands on Pierre Poilievre, and that probably seals the deal for Mr. Poilievre in terms of winning the race.
Harper sat out the last two leadership races that elected Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer.
So I wonder why he thought in this particular race, maybe it's his dislike for Mr. Jean Charest, but I wonder why he had to weigh in now in this particular race. I do think if you are a former prime minister, there is a quality where you have to hover above the fray.
Stephen Harper is definitely not above the fray. He's right in this fight. And Conservative strategists say that gives Pierre Poilievre an even better shot at winning the leadership. Winning an election will be a different matter. The Conservatives' opponents will be sure to remind Canadians why they voted out Harper and his party. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, Canada-based Shopify is laying off about 1,000 employees. The tech company flourished because of online shopping during the height of the pandemic. But as Peter Armstrong reports, its growth outlook has changed now that consumers are returning to stores.
For a brief moment there, Shopify was Canada's most valuable company. This small upstart taking on giants like Amazon. Remember, the pandemic changed how we shop, and Shopify was there to help the retailers pivot. They were able to expand their reach and weather the pandemic storm. They were able to serve customers that simply couldn't come into their stores at the time. In its turn, Shopify saw its stock skyrocket, surpassing even Canadian banking giant RBC. But then COVID changed again. Restrictions were lifted and consumers were able to go back to in-store shopping. In a note to employees today, Shopify's CEO Tobias Lütke said the company believed the pandemic was going to mean that e-commerce would permanently jump ahead by 5, maybe even 10 years. In that note to staff, Lütke wrote, "It's now clear that bet didn't pay off," that he is now expecting that in-person and e-commerce mix is going to return to about where it would have been had the pandemic never actually happened. So the company's cutting back. It's laying off 1,000 employees, admitting that it probably should have seen this coming. It's cold comfort, of course, to employees who were let go today.
I think they made a lot of decisions really naively based off of growth during COVID, when obviously everybody was forced to conduct business online. And I think operating as if that would be a permanent increase in online, like in e-commerce and online shopping revenue, was an error, really big error.
And now, instead of double-digit growth, Shopify and others in the retail sectors are staring down a forecasted recession. Inflation is eating into purchasing power, rising interest rates, squeezing households. So the consumers who drove all those sales during the pandemic are scaling back. And in response, Shopify's stock has tanked. The company peaked at $272 billion in value, and today it's trading at around $50 billion. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Another sign today of an increasingly damaged relationship between Russia and the West. The new head of that country's space agency says it will pull out of the International Space Station after 2024. Russia plans to shift its focus to building its own orbiting outpost. The decision caught NASA by surprise. The U.S. Space Agency had been hoping to maintain the relationship until 2030. The International Space Station is one of the last civil links of cooperation between the two countries since Russia invaded Ukraine. This decision puts the future of the space station into question. There are clouds created by fire that in turn create fires of their own. The terrifying science behind pyrocumulus clouds. That's next. And at 6:43, a live look at Penticton and the bottom end of Okanagan Lake tonight. Plenty of people on the water. It's a scorching 35 degrees right now, only set to get hotter. The full weather with Johanna is coming up.
Yellowknife, it's really lovely to be with you this afternoon. I hope everybody's having a great day so far. How do you feel? This is a song called Wasted. Sing along if you like, okay? I love staying up so late. I love getting a good night's sleep. I want to hear some old hymns tonight. I need to hear Christopher Wallace speak. I could go for some food right now. I could care less if we ever eat. I sure love just sitting around. Some days I'm never off my feet, but gotta love what you do, babe, for that jingle jangle, 'cause we only get a few days. Nobody makes it out of here anyway. Put the shuffle in your shoes, babe. That's the thing worth chasing. Gotta love what you do, babe. So not a day goes wasted. Don't wanna let a day go wasted. So go ahead, be a scientist. Start a band with your best friends. Be the muscle with a phony list. Change some oil, burn your wrist. Stay home, raise a family. Go teach gym overseas. I'll love you for whatever it is. Just don't let a day go wasted. Don't wanna let a day go wasted. So, gotta love what you do, babe, for that jingle jangle, 'cause we only get a few days. Nobody makes it out of here anyway. Put the shuffle in your shoes, babe. That's the thing worth chasing. Gotta love what you do, babe, so not a day goes wasted. Don't wanna let a day go wasted. I like the TV way too loud. I like it colder when we sleep. I drive too close to the outside lane. I drive you crazy when I breathe. Think I'm ready for a new life. Think I'm ready for a beautiful wife. Think I'm done with fighting, 'cause it's just time we're wasting. Yeah. How's that feel, Yellowknife?
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050, Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
So far this year, there have been 2,600 wildfires across Canada. The dangers of these fires are well known, but as Fiona Odlum explains, some can create a treacherous phenomenon known as fire clouds.
Pyrocumulus clouds, or fire clouds, are dense cumulus cloud formations associated with wildfires, and they can make a bad situation worse and fast. Cumulus clouds are those puffy white cotton ball-like clouds that we see on a nice fair weather day. Wildfires can give off a lot of heat and moisture-heavy water vapor, which can create clouds. Those clouds are called pyrocumulus. When air over the fire becomes superheated, it rises in a large column. As the heated air with the moisture rises, it rushes up the smoke column into the atmosphere. That moisture then condenses into droplets. Sometimes the moisture condenses in the cloud and then falls as rain, which can extinguish the fire. But if the fire is large enough, the air it produces can create what is called dry lightning and spark another fire. Plus, a pyrocloud can cause a downdraft of cool air that spreads away from the thunderstorm and can cause the wildfire to spread. Fire clouds look much like thunderheads before a big thunderstorm. They're often grayish to brown in color because of the ash and smoke associated with the fire. Pyrocumulus clouds, or fire clouds, should always be taken seriously. They pose a threat to firefighters and are an immediate signal that they've got big trouble below. Fiona Odlum, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Okay, we have some news just coming in. There's been an earthquake in the Philippines. Johanna Wagstaffe is standing by. You're also a seismologist, Joe. What can you tell us about that earthquake?
Yeah, Anita, earlier this hour, magnitude 7.1 struck northwestern Philippines near the city of Dolores. 7.1 is a significant earthquake. It looks like the depth was 10 kilometers. That is also fairly shallow for an earthquake that size. So we are hearing reports that a hospital in the Philippine town of Abra has been evacuated after a partial collapse. No injuries at this point, but this is early. We're also worried in the northwest about something called a liquefaction, something we also worry about in parts of British Columbia, where the soil has amplification in that shaking because of the type of soil, and that is a liquefaction-prone region. A couple of aftershocks in the area as well. So we'll keep you posted. Again, magnitude 7.1 in northwestern Philippines in the past hour. Okay, I want to take you to the weather maps and show you our own big story, which is the heat. Taking you through the big picture. It's going to hold for the next few days. It's really not until Sunday that dome collapses and we see more of a zonal flow, which means a west to east flow, getting some marine air. It'll be much more comfortable come Sunday. Also watching for, I know we heard the pyroclastic cloud explainer there. I'm not expecting to see any lightning strikes with any systems over the next few days, but we'll be watching for the end of this heat on Sunday. Sometimes that comes with a dry cold front that can spark some lightning. I don't see it yet in the forecast, but sometimes in these situations, we really don't see it for a couple of days out. So I'll keep you posted. That would be Sunday. Until then, it is dry and hot. 33 in Kelowna. That humidex, though, certainly a factor, especially on the south coast, particularly muggy with this system. 18 in through Prince Rupert. You'll see some sunshine in the afternoon. Not in the heat warning, but definitely above seasonal for you in the coming days as well. Okay, let's break down this forecast. Big temperatures you see, that's for YVR. It is significantly cooler by the water. Inland, even just a few blocks. Look at those temperatures we're hitting. Those are just straight temperatures. 33 tomorrow. Potentially a little bit hotter for Thursday, Anita. That might end up being the peak of our heat. Again, look for a couple more days of 40 humidex values until we see things cool down Sunday and Monday. So this really is a long event. I know we get a few of these heat waves every summer, but this one is a long one. We'll be watching.
All right, we will keep in touch with you as much as we can. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, just in time for the long weekend, big reopening to help beat the heat. The reaction from Kitts Beach next.
The cart is unique to the Métis people, and it had to be able to carry a lot of stuff. The Métis invented this cart. It's connected to their French ancestors. There was a cart in France. The significant difference is these are made entirely of wood. One of the things that's unique about the cart is the sound of wood rubbing against wood. The axles could not be lubricated with grease because of the fine prairie dust which would congeal. So therefore, the carts, you can imagine the sound of the carts, say 1,000 carts going along the trail, it would be horrendous. George Moritz is the man who makes these, and it's a dying art. We can't find people who make the authentic Red River cart. It's important to our culture, just as our flag is.
It takes me roughly a month, to make one. This wheel is roughly close to 5 feet tall. The way it's constructed, it has a 10-inch hub. It's made out of birch. If you look at it closely, it has a 6-degree dish. It just gives the carriage stabilization on the prairies. My wife, she's Metis, inspired me to get into the construction of the Red River cart.
The Red River cart provided lots for them, essential shelter at night and protection, and it was safety. They slept under them and they covered them with hide or whatever they had at the time, traveling from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, coming to Alberta, and they would travel the trails.
They could cross water, the wheels would pop off, and they could put them underneath and float on top. They could take it across the stream. Entirely of wood, it would float. And then they put the wheels back on the other side, put the pin back in, and they're good to go.
I've got a partner here that loves to make the Métis carts, and this is me. I live it every day, I'm Métis, I'm proud of it, and I got Cree background, Mi'kmaq. About 10, 15 years, I'd like to see these, carts in historical sites.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On August 19th, join Anita Bathe at a panel discussion with the filmmakers of Emergence, Out of the Shadows, at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. Get tickets to the film screening at queerfilmfestival.ca. And during Pride, we are celebrating the amazing people across the province that make the community beautiful, diverse, and unique. Read about these outstanding individuals at cbc.ca/proudtoshine.
A new initiative in Nova Scotia is bringing a wider audience to the great outdoors. As Victoria Welland reports, the series of workshops is aimed at engaging Black and Indigenous people, people of color, and new Canadians.
It just has 2 legs.
Ever wondered what kind of tiny organisms live in a wetland? This group is finding out. They're taking part in a workshop on wetlands organized by Nature Nova Scotia. Ankit Bajaj recently graduated from Dalhousie University. He moved to Halifax from India.
I think it's a great initiative by Nature Nova Scotia for just hosting this event where we could connect with the nature, we could join the groups, meet new people, make new friends, but at the same time explore the nature and the beauty of Nova Scotia and Halifax.
This workshop was led by a conservation educator from Ducks Unlimited. At Belcher's Marsh, the group learned about the importance of wetlands to the ecosystem and native plants that thrive in the environment. They even got to taste some local berries along the way. The initiative started after some at Nature Nova Scotia noticed a lack of diversity in their networks.
Nature is for everyone, and it's important that everyone get to benefit from it and experience it and get that leadership skills that they need, to even lead events in their community. And the HRM is a very diverse city, so we need that to be represented in our natural history network here.
Cooper grew up in a refugee camp in Ghana. She says her family and her culture valued the natural world for medicine, food, and enjoyment. Now she wants to share that joy with others in diverse communities.
I love connecting communities with nature because I know how beneficial it is to be out in nature, and that's what motivates me to bring them. Because when I see people's face when we are outside in nature, it's amazing, and you can't get that with anything else.
The workshops will continue into the fall. Upcoming sessions will be on a variety of topics like birding, mushrooms, and coastal ecosystems. Victoria Welland, CBC News, Halifax.
Vancouver's popular Kitsilano pool is set to reopen on Saturday. The busy outdoor swimming hole was closed as city staff worked to complete necessary maintenance and repairs after that big storm in January. The reopening is good news, of course, for many who say they've been waiting for months to take a dip.
Well, I might not be first in line, but I certainly will come down. I live far away.
So excited. We were just saying that we need to plan a weekend.
Yeah, when it opens, we're going to have a beach day.
I feel happy. It's a kind of a Kit staple. And I went on a big bike ride today. I rode fast. There was nobody in there, and I was like, why is the pool not open?
Despite their excitement to jump in the water, the Parks Board warns that capacity may be limited at all outdoor pools around the city. That's because of staffing shortages. Okay, this is awesome, of course, a much-loved pool. We've been using a wading pool in Burnaby, one of many in the city of Burnaby, but they drain the water each day, so I have to say I'm a little bit chicken when it comes to getting in. I'm usually ankle deep, and that's it. Okay, thanks so much for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. It's really nice to be back with you, and we'll see you tomorrow.